like Tripathi said, is a great initiative that the DRPG has done by getting all the ATIs, because the cutting edge of development actually happens in the states. And if capacities of states are not being invested on, I think we'll never be going about doing the task which, in a sense, the Capacity Building Commission is mandated for. So as most of you will be aware of Mission Karmayogi and the Capacity Building Commission, I won't get into that. I'll get directly into the subject that I would like to share. Faculty and why are they important? Before that, full disclosure. I am a person who strongly believes its time has come, especially the last 2 years has demonstrated. A time has come for us to even relook at the sectoral differentiation that every country goes through, and our country is no exception. We look at public sector separately, we look at the private sector separately, and we look at the sector which I have lived most of my life in, the civil society groups, separately. But I think for the first time in the nation, the narrative of all of us being part of a Team India, building this new India for each one of us, itself is, I think, a major shift, a major paradigm shift in our thinking, which calls for a new set of skills. No longer can we be feudal in our outlook and say this belongs to the government, this belongs to us. So we need to learn how to live up to this, what Prime Minister called the Jan Bhagidari concept. And somebody who deeply believes in it and is convinced about the potential of citizens and what they can contribute to human development. I think the state is one of the finest catalysts that we can all imagine to bring about this change. And I would like to speak from that perspective. And from that perspective, I would say even training is a flawed word. The very word training has to be possibly rejigged. In a gig economy, I think training has no relevance anymore. What we need is, we can't really train anybody. In an industrial economy, it was very relevant, but in a knowledge-based economy, you can only build capacities. And that is why possibly the only single agency around the world which is called the Capacity Building Commission is India. That itself demonstrates the intent and seriousness of the government in not just using semantics, but going beyond it and bringing in a lived experience of capacity building. So I would look forward to the day when DRPG can push all our ATIs to rechristen themselves, not as administrative training institutes, but truly as institutes for building capacities for human development itself. Because that is what they are, and that is what they need to be. It's not about administration, it's about administering for what. And Tripathi said it so beautifully. And that is where I would like to talk about faculty. Because faculty, being a faculty, having been a faculty and continuing to be a faculty in several Ivy Leagues, I would like all of us to understand and appreciate the kind of investment we need to make on the people who matter. No longer can India afford to look at our institutions as just institutions where you're posted because you're nowhere else to go. In the Prime Minister's own words, when he met the Commission for the first time, he told us these have to be coveted postings. Our people, faculty, have to be celebrated for what they bring to the table, and that celebratory atmosphere is what our institutions need to create now. So how does capacity building look like? And again, I would like to differentiate. Training is a very small component of capacity building. Capacity is a much larger construct, which has to be seen in its wholesomeness. And the beginning, the door can be open to training. The training is not the end all or be all of our capacity building processes, whether it's institutional readjustments, because in a new world where the sectoral boundaries are blurring, and we demonstrated through the management of COVID, I think the single largest in a country of our size, the greatest public health success, and we don't even pat ourselves on the back. We Indians suffer from this undue disadvantage of being extremely self-critical. But I think as a public health expert, I can say this: when you compare global literature, we have a lot to be proud about. And our public health systems delivered, and that delivery happened not by chance. Maybe over the last 60, 70 years, we have been building our capacities not even knowing it. And today, whether it's disaster management or, I was just talking to a friend, 100 crore vaccination is not, it's not something which you can even think about. As a physician, I know, and having lived in the grassroots, the challenge to get a baby vaccinated. We only do around 3 crore vaccinations of children a year, and now that looks so small and insignificant compared to the 100 crores. But how did this capacity come about? Did we train anybody, or is the capacity embedded in the system? These are all questions very deep and we need to ask ourselves. So whether it's institutional adjustments, which is happening all the time, or creating an enormous awareness of what we need to learn and understand and decipher out, or even policy and policy reconstruction, which some states themselves have moved ahead in talking about policies, and nationally also. 2012, I don't know how many of you are even aware, we possibly have a future-looking policy in 2012 itself. You know, the time has come for us to ask ourselves, what have we achieved out of that, and what we possibly missed out, and what do we need to reintegrate. So we have already thought about a lot of things. Now what we need to bring back to the table is the discipline to actually implement it, and creating these organizational cultures where all of this can happen. So capacity building is all this. And if you are part of a capacity building institution like an ATI or any CTI, the skill set and all that you need to do this is enormous. So I don't want to stress this again and again, and I was recently privileged to be with 10 days of spending time with officers across the cadres at Labasna, and just engaging and interacting with them, there's so much of learning that was there in the air. And I was wondering, how can you even talk of training these people? All that you can talk about is suck out the knowledge that is already there inside them and see how that can be institutionally repackaged to be shared in our ATIs for future generations. I think that itself is a skill which our faculty need to possibly acquire. So faculty's role is getting redefined in this world today. The first thing is, how do you facilitate knowledge? How do you co-create knowledge? And how do you use this knowledge in the administrative space? It is not about teaching anybody anymore. Teaching is a hierarchical mindset which is absolutely not acceptable in a world today where adult learning is getting redefined. As we progress in the space of learning and understanding learning, as we understand neurosciences better, as we understand the human brain and its capacity to keep learning all the time, we talk of plasticity today as though it's something out there, but it's there inside us. And this is what gives us the enormous ability to learn. So faculty can no longer talk about teaching. They have to move away from teaching to creating learning ecosystems, because they need to understand that most adults, especially in the public administration or any space, even the corporate space, 70% of our learning happens in an experiential mode. And if you are not willing to look at experience as a teacher, and if you're not willing to understand how to encapsulate this experience, and also understand that experience cannot influence us, because that's a danger. You know, in the governmental system, we have a favorite thing of calling upon precedences. I think this precedences destroys innovation. And we need to understand that experience should inform us, but it should not influence us. And this is a very, very nuanced art which faculty have to bring to the table, where they understand how to capture experiences of people, their own students in the classroom. Like I keep remembering, when we teach mid-careers, there's such potential that every time I run a course for mid-careers anywhere in the world, I come back so enriched. Because the learning that you get in 3 days or 5 days is what they would acquired over 20, 25 years. And if you can learn how, the faculty can learn, how do we bring it to the table? How do we bring it out for each other? How do we cross-pollinate knowledge that stays in this room and amongst all of you? So how do you facilitate that learning and create it? That is 70% is experiential. Only 20% is relational, and I'm sure most officers across the country are watching this will remember. I call it this magic mantra of the services. The tendency is to pick up the phone and call a batchmate and say, what would you do in this situation? Or what did you do in the posting of yours as when you were commissioner there or a commissioner here? So I think a lot of knowledge is cross-fertilizing by reaching out to people we know, but you're not institutionalized this. At the commission, we are seriously looking forward, how do you institutionalize and embed this learning in the government itself, where people can reach out to each other through technology and other abilities we have today. So 20% is relational, only 10% is informational. So we live in a knowledge economy where only 10% is informational. And remember, technology has moved so far ahead, but institutions and people have not moved along proportionally. Technologists have moved ahead, but we have not moved along with them. And learning suffers from that malaise, where we have not caught up with capitalizing on the technological progress, whether it's in sciences or instrumentation itself. The next thing is academic advising. And I'm talking all this based on my experience across several CTIs and ATIs in this country now. And I've been interacting with a lot of ATIs for the last 30 years, either as invited resource person and stuff like that. We somehow think everything in programs. We look at 3 days, 5 days, and then we're done with it. We don't see the continuum of learning. Learning happens much before they come into our institutions. It will continue to happen after they leave our institutions. But what they need is a helping hand, a mentor embedded in the institutions to provide academic advising. And this is something which our faculty have to acquire, and that's the reason why they have to be there. You cannot, how much our technology progresses, how much ever we have this BC-based thing, which I myself was thinking I could do today, but you can never replace a brick and mortar institution. We already have research for the last 18-20 months across universities in the world, where Zoom-based learning has got a price, a fatigue, and learning outcomes are far inferior to brick and mortar learning. And the best now that we're talking about is digital ecosystems, where there's a combination of digital learning with physical brick and mortar learning and exploiting flipped classroom concepts and stuff like that. So it's a seamless integration of several advanced thinking in learning design. So learning design is a specialization. In fact, I would even say every ATI should start recruiting not just faculty, but learning designers. The time has come for behavioral scientists, anthropologists, and learning designers to work together. So program is not just a schedule. I find a lot of ATIs drawing out a schedule is what they see as learning. Learning is a highly complex, intricate design, which is what we need to bring to the table. And some of our institutions do it so well in India. They may not have the words for it, but they're actually doing it. And can we learn from each other? There are several ATIs which are pioneers in the way they do training need assessment, the way they understand learning, and they can just cross-pollinate and learn from each other. How do you facilitate growth and learning? How do you promote a robust learning environment? How do you create mentorship? I think these are all reasons why faculty are irreplaceable. And nobody else can do this. A machine cannot do this. An algorithm cannot do this. So we need, we have to use iGOT as a powerful instrument of change for reaching millions of our learners. But iGOT has to be a complement. iGOT can provide the 10% informational learning and some amount of experiential learning. But if you want the comprehensive learning to get stimulated, you need a faculty. And this debate, and this is something which I have been struggling with. I remember several years ago as a fellow at the Kennedy School, my mandate was this: people saw me as a practitioner, 30 years of living in the grassroots. And I was teaching also in the university, so some of them saw me as an academician. So I wasn't sure what I was, and I could straddle both worlds. And what the mandate given to me was, I was in a center, which was a university-wide center, and I could reach out to all the resources across Harvard. But the mandate given was, how do I combine my practitioner learning with academic knowledge and see if we can work out an understanding of human development from that convergence of that space. And I will tell you, one of the few things that I look back on with a lot of sadness is my failure in trying to get academicians in that own academic setup, in one of the world's most prestigious universities, to actually talk to practitioners. You would have convenings of practitioners and there would always be tension. Every convening I would call is just increase my blood pressure but not achieve anything. Because academicians look down at practitioners. They think that these practitioners don't listen to us anyway. Practitioners look down on academicians saying these guys design things which doesn't matter on the ground. These things don't work. I think the truth lies somewhere in between. And most of our ATS have resource persons you invite from universities. You have extraordinary officers who are actually embedded in this as faculty, but let me tell you, a good practitioner is not equal to a good faculty. As much as a good academician is not equivalent to a good understanding, doesn't have a deep understanding of practice. So academicians operate very disconnected from practitioner spaces. Just because they go do a little research in a village doesn't make them a rural development expert. And we need to be conscious. Possibly the local PDO in the Gram Panchayat is a greater rural development expert, but we don't treat him as such, because in India, we think knowledge is hierarchical. I must be a professor to talk to all of you, only then you listen to me, otherwise you won't even let me into the room. I think we need to get out of this and understand learning has to be as equals. We are all co-learning, co-generating knowledge, and we are all together in this journey. So the academicians have to move away. They're so focused on theory. Without a theory of change, without a logic model to explain the learning, they are not going to accept new development interventions. And they believe education trumps field experience. They believe I can get 2 more degrees and I know how to do it. But practitioners are different. They operate from a practical, grounded truth understanding. They have a lot of domain expertise that gather by just being there doing that. And they don't wait to focus on theories because the pressure on them to respond, to act is so immediate. And but the problem is, because of all this, they start believing that field experience trumps all the education you can get. I think the reality is the truth lies somewhere in between. And this is the equation that our institutions have acquired. Academicians require grassroots experience. I would strongly urge all our ATIs to allow academicians to go get their hands dirty, go soak themselves for 3 to 6 months in field experiences, and then come back to teach. Otherwise, some of the examples, some of them give us so atrocious. I'm sure many people in the audience, when I've spoken to them, they actually laugh inside themselves and say, this guy doesn't know what he's talking. But they're just sitting there because the DG asked them to sit there, they'll sit there. But at the end of the day, are they learning? It's a question we are never measured, because we don't measure learning. We only take immediate response, how the training program was, how was the food, how was the hall, how was the bedding. And then we move on to the next training program. So we have to actually look at building practitioners also with academic abilities. And let me tell you, 30 years of practice cannot be given to an academician in 3 months. But you can make a practitioner an academician in 3 days. We can give them the tools to transact. So I am a strong believer now, after seeing from the inside the CTIs, we should not even worry about calling outsiders too much. We should look at how many officers can be engaging in the system to bring valuable experiential knowledge, but run them through a crash course of faculty building. And we at the Commission are very seriously developing modules to create faculty out of our practitioners. And eventually we'll be teaming up with all CTIs and possibly embed this in all the CTIs, this knowledge, and reach out, and any ATI can send their people. And that's a commitment we can make from the Commission, that we will help you understand how to transact such powerful knowledge that's already embedded in your experiential basis across the world in the learning ecosystem for adults. So what do you need? And what are the skill sets we have to focus on? The first thing is the mindset. We need to move away from being the teacher, as simple as that. We need to get into the mindset of promoting learning. And we have to have the humility to learn. Sometimes practitioner experience builds ego. And I have seen some very powerful egos in public administration. And I think we need to move away and say, I don't know anything, I don't know much. I may know something, but people may know more than me. And the people are the people we serve. And some powerful experience, there's this famous statement in public health we keep teaching our students, go live with the people. Learn from them, live with them, and build on what they know. Because learning is always from the known to the unknown. And if you're taking somebody into the unknown, it should be unknown to you also. That is the joy of learning. That's the joy of travel itself. If you start thinking, I know, and these people don't know and I'm taking them there, I think co-generation is lost. So how do you make it lifelong? Because the complexities of the world are so challenging. The dynamics are so challenging. I remember 20 years ago, we were talking of design for 10 years. And 20 years ago, I specialized in what is called instructional design. We used to instruct, and we all had ADDIE models and instructional design models. 2 years ago, I had to retrain myself in what is called learning design. You cannot instruct anybody, you can only help people learn. And that makes such powerful biological sense. Because how did we all learn as children? From the families that we lived in. How did we learn languages? We don't even ask, how do you know milk is white and how is a potato? When the moment you say a potato, you say aloo. Who taught us that? Your mother didn't always have to teach you much of things because it happened. She created learning ecosystems. So we have experiences, especially our own Gurukula systems, where powerful learning ecosystems. Now anything you talk of the past, it becomes politically dangerous. But we had such powerful learning models in this country. All we have to do is look back at our past to understand how to design our present so that we can build a great future. And we should not hesitate from it. The mindset should be like a guru in a Gurukula. And that's a powerful mindset. Explore, validate, and then sort of proselytize what you get. But we need a lot of skill sets. And these are all trainable skill sets. It's the easiest. You got to really understand how do you map your learning need assessment. How do you create empathy maps? Simple empathy maps where you can understand your learners. How do you actually how do you design learning? Every program can be designed on the basis of experiential, relational, and informational. How do you enable learning? How do you engage audiences? How do you build adult learning, bring in adult learning knowledge practices into the system? How do you generate e-learning? And we have to understand this. A lot of and very prestigious academic institutions in our country, the tragedy is you go ask them, they give you digital learning tools. They don't give you e-learning tools. They think take a video of what I'm talking now, put it on iGot, we're done how to do faculty training. That is digital learning. It just, these marriages, they are videos. So that fellow is better at it than all of us. We need to ask ourselves, is it e-learning? E-learning is a very complex process. It's a very expensive process, but it pays off if you look at it as learning. Any learning more than 3 to 5 minutes is not going to enable learning for adults. So if you're not giving it in chunks of 3 to 5 minutes, you've lost your audience, whether it's on the computer or whether it's on when I'm talking. My talk itself is too long actually. I've already lost most of you. So the skill set, we need to do that. No, that's a reality. We all have to deal with the reality of adults. And especially in a world today, in India, we should talk of concentration. We used to talk of dhyana and samadhi and all that. I will tell you today, we got to talk of not concentrating. We got to talk of creating in us ability not to get distracted. Now, there's a great book called Deep Work, where it's not about working at all. All of us are working. We are working on what? On emails, which algorithms can do. You actually design an algorithm to reply to your emails and you'll start doing it. We are all spending time on such superficial, shallow work that we have not gone deep enough. And learning is deep work, remember that. So the skill set for that. And we don't measure anything we do. Tripathi spoke of ease of living. How do you know that your training is going to lead to ease of living at all? We don't ask ourselves. If you really want to measure your training programs, it's an expensive process, it's a science, and we at the Commission can help you do it. There are 4 levels that you got to do it. First is the immediate response. You do it, then before they come in, you do a baseline, and before they leave, you do an immediate response. You do a cognitive assessment 90 days to 180 days after the training. How much have they learned? You do a behavioral change again 180 to 360 days. And you do an impact on the ground for people they deal with. And that is when you can say whether your training had an impact. It is not a simple 3-page feedback form that you give. Feedback itself is a flawed word. Have the courage to say we're measuring. It's a metric of our work and we need to disclose it. And that is exactly what we can support any of the ATIs or CTIs that reach out to us. How do you design these complex things? It is not rocket science. Every faculty can learn to do it and you have to learn it. Bring in the practitioner experience and don't forget your domain expertise. You need domain expertise. Otherwise, they are not going in a world which is transitioning from hierarchy to equal learning. You have to demonstrate you are one step ahead. And domain expertise gives you that. So at the Commission, what do we believe? We want to make the position of faculty celebrated. We want to invest on people. We want to actually enable people to be long enough for us to invest on them. We want to measure how faculty performs. It cannot be a punishment posting anymore. It has to be a posting which people desire because we have to incentivize it. And incentives doesn't have to be by. And we have models. The NADT in Shimla has worked out a very powerful model. It's also CTI and none of us know about it. We are discovering all these new models. They only allow, if people go abroad and come back, you have to work as faculty. If you're a faculty, only then you get a chance to go abroad. So they brought in all the small incentives, which actually are working. So faculty position can be made coveted. We are going to help build skill set and the mindset. That's the training I spoke about. We'll create the learner responsiveness, which is what we need to do. And finally, just imagine the potential of this country. We can't find solutions for India's problems by working in silos. One of the mandates of the Commission for us is de-siloization and creating cross-pollination and building shared learning resources. Why should we have every ATI or every CTI become an expert in some same leadership subject, something else? Each center can develop an excellent center in different things. And then we just cross-pollinate and share. Why shouldn't Narona Academy send people to Mysore or Mysore send people to Yashda for the expertise they have developed? Why should we keep rediscovering the wheel? So we at level of ATIs must go deep in a few things because we just can't go wide anymore. It's too much for us to go wide. And then understand who's deep in what and have a single portal where you can exchange names of resource persons, names of courses. Learning designers can be just a central pool of learning designers. You don't have to have everybody in every center. There's so many powerful ways in which you can do this. And hopefully, all of us together will actually take faculty and investment on faculty as a very important investment that we need to make. If you really want to create a new generation of public administrators, you cannot create them without investing on the people who actually can create them. And I believe we cannot let accident to enable our public administrators. Things happen in the jobs and they think that is the process. We can actually be very conscious, deliberate and intentional about this very sacred work that our centers have to do. And programs like this are ways to sensitize and beginning the journey. And now all of us have to commit to taking this journey forward. And at the Capacity Building Commission, we are committed to walking the talk with you and making sure that we create global class faculty. Tripathi mentioned about we learning from the world. As much as we need to learn from the world, I think we can teach the world a lot. Learning design has been embedded in our cultural DNA. We have to rediscover it, bring it back, and give it scientific jargon, which is what the Western world understands, and present it back to them. I remember 2 statements. One by Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, whom the world considered illiterate, and a simple statement he made. so powerful. He said, as long as I live, so long do I learn. I think every administrator has to keep that as his mantra. And Swami Vivekananda said, India has got a lot to offer. We have to have faith in that. I think the time has come for us to bring together our learning, our knowledge, package it, present it, and that is when we can call ourselves a Jagat Guru. And hopefully we will be the model of public administration in the decade to come. Thank you.